All right, so are you ready to dive into this? We're tackling ExO Consulting this time. And let me tell you, we've got Jaroslav, Kevin, Kent, and Paul all sharing their wisdom. Talk about a dream team, right?
And what's really cool is they're not just throwing around theory, they've been in the trenches guiding businesses through some serious growth.
Exactly. They've seen it all, from those aha moments to those what were we thinking moments. And speaking of challenges, it seems like one of the biggest hurdles for ExO consultants is dealing with people who just resist change.
It's like that saying, the only constant is change, right? But our experts were clear, getting people on board with that change, that's where things get really tricky.
Yeah, because you can have the most brilliant strategy in the world, but if nobody's buying it, well, good luck with that.
Exactly. And it's not enough to just say, hey, we're doing this EXO thing now, get on board.
Yeah.
You have to understand where that resistance is coming from.
So it's like detective work almost, uncovering those hidden fears and motivations before you can even start talking about transformation.
You got it. It's about really listening to people, understanding their past experiences, and what's at stake for them personally. Because change can be scary, right?
For sure. So how do you actually do that? Is it all about empathy and active listening? Or are there more, shall we say, persuasive tactics involved?
Well, a little empathy never hurts. But one thing our experts emphasized was the power of storytelling.
Oh, I love a good story, because nothing breaks down those walls like a compelling narrative, right?
Exactly. And our panelists shared some great examples of how they've used stories to win over even the most skeptical clients. Like, imagine you're talking to a company that's stuck in a rut.
Been there.
Right. So instead of hitting them with all the technical jargon about EXO, you tell them a story about a company just like theirs that was struggling, took a chance on EXO, and totally turned things around.
Okay, I could see how that would be way more impactful than just bullet points on a slide. It makes it real relatable.
Exactly. And stories don't have to be limited to just direct competitors either. Sometimes the most effective stories come from completely different industries, but highlight those universal challenges and triumphs.
That makes sense, because at the end of the day, we're all human, right? We connect with stories on an emotional level.
Absolutely. But even with the best stories and all the empathy in the world, you're going to encounter resistance. It's inevitable.
So what happens when you hit those roadblocks? Do you just throw in the towel?
Definitely not. Resilience is key. Remember, even seasoned EXO experts face setbacks. It's how you respond that makes all the difference.
I like that. So you're saying those moments of frustration are actually opportunities for growth?
Exactly. And sometimes, honestly, the best way to handle those moments is to just laugh it off a little.
A little humor goes a long way. It's easy to get caught up in the seriousness of it all.
You said it. But speaking of support, our experts had some really insightful things to say about tailoring EXO solutions for each client.
Okay, so forget that one-size-fits-all approach. It's about customization, right?
Absolutely. Remember Paul's story about the client who achieved 325% growth? He didn't even lead with EXO. He focused on solving their immediate problems and using those EXO principles as building blocks.
That's a great example of meeting clients where they are. But it also requires a deep understanding of just how flexible EXO can be, right?
Exactly. It's like having a toolbox full of different tools. You need to know which tool to use for which situation.
So it's about being a problem solver, not just an EXO evangelist.
Precisely. And that often involves addressing those deeper underlying issues that might not be immediately obvious.
Peeling back the layers of the onion, so to speak. But let's be real. Even if you've got the perfect EXO solution tailored to their every need, you still need to sell it, right?
Now you're getting to the heart of it. Selling transformation, especially when buzzwords are a dime a dozen, that's an art form in itself.
Okay, so let's talk about the art of the pitch. How do you convince a client to embark on this exponential journey with you? What's the secret?
Well, Paul, one of our experts, had this great phrase, the Tai Chi move. He says, don't lead with EXO, lead with their problems.
Ooh, I like that. It's about positioning yourself as a trusted advisor, someone who understands their challenges and genuinely wants to help them succeed.
You got it. Remember, people are much more receptive to solutions when they feel heard and understood. They need to know you're on their team.
Exactly. It's not about dazzling them with jargon or anything. It's about showing them you're in their corner, ready to tackle those challenges together. And, a lot of times the most powerful tool you have isn't a fancy presentation. It's a well-chosen story.
Okay, we've talked about storytelling a bit, but how does that actually work in a client pitch? Give me an example.
Okay, so picture this. You're sitting across from a CEO who's a little unsure, maybe even a bit scared, of really shaking things up. Now, instead of bombarding them with all these stats about exponential growth, you tell a story. Think of a story about a company, a lot like theirs, actually, facing those same hurdles, but then they take a leap of faith with ExO and bam, amazing results. Ah, okay, so it's like you're painting a picture of what's possible, showing them that transformation isn't just some abstract idea, it's a real thing.
You got it. But stories aren't just for winning over the skeptics. They're also really great at explaining those EXO principles in a way that just clicks, you know?
So instead of just saying, hey, we got to leverage AI, you could tell a story about a company that used AI to solve a real problem. Like, what about that documentary filmmaker who used staff on demand to get over that scheduling nightmare he had?
There you go. Suddenly, it's not about the tech itself. It's about the problem it fixes, the impact it has, and those are the stories people remember.
It's about taking something complex and making it relatable, something they can actually use. But we've got to talk about trust too, right? Because you're basically asking these clients to trust you with their business, their livelihood, their future. That's a big deal.
You're telling me trust is everything in consulting. And our experts had a lot to say about how to build that trust right from the start.
All right, so what's the secret? Is it all about charisma? Being a smooth talker?
Well, a little charm never hurts, right? But it goes way deeper than that. Remember, you're not just selling a service, you're selling yourself too.
So being genuine is key.
Exactly. Be real, be open, and don't be afraid to show a little vulnerability now and then.
So let them see that I'm human too, that I've had my own struggles and learned from them.
Exactly. Because when you share those experiences, you connect with people. It makes you relatable, trustworthy, and in the end, a better consultant.
That makes a lot of sense. We all want to work with people we feel like we know and get along with, people who've been there, you know.
For sure. And speaking of keeping it real, we've got to talk about navigating those power dynamics that come with the territory. Because, let's be honest, walking into a room with a CEO who's in charge of the budget can be intimidating.
Yeah, it's like that feeling of being called to the principal's office, but with way higher stakes.
What did our experts say about holding your own in those situations?
Confidence, they said. Be clear and really know your value proposition inside and out. So no more shrinking violet, no more second guessing. It's about owning what you bring to the table.
Exactly. They brought you in for a reason, right?
Yeah.
You have the knowledge, the skills, the experience to help them transform. Don't be shy about reminding them of that.
Good point. But what about those times when leadership pushes back? Maybe they question your approach, your fees, or even your sanity. How do you handle those moments gracefully?
That's where communication is key. It's about really listening to what they're saying, responding thoughtfully, but also standing your ground when you need to.
So it's a balancing act between being flexible and being firm. You're willing to adjust, but also staying true to your principles and your worth.
You nailed it.
Yeah.
And remember, you're not just representing yourself in those moments, you're representing this whole EXO movement.
It's like being an ambassador for this new way of doing business, this new way of thinking.
Exactly. Which is pretty exciting when you think about it. But let's be real for a second. It's not all fancy client meetings and exponential growth charts. Yeah, there's a lot of, behind-the-scenes work that goes into making an EXO consulting practice successful.
Okay, yeah, let's pull back the curtain a bit and talk about the nuts and bolts of actually running this type of business. Passion's great, purpose is awesome, but they don't always pay the rent.
That's the truth. And our experts got real about the financial side of EXO consulting, which I appreciated.
All right, lay it on me. How do you price your services, put together a proposal that gets their attention, and have those sometimes awkward conversations about money?
Remember that mindset shift we talked about earlier? Going from charging for your time to charging for the value you deliver. That's crucial here.
Because you're not just selling hours, right? You're selling transformation, something that could seriously impact their bottom line.
Exactly. And that kind of transformation, well, it's worth something. But how do you quantify that value? When you're writing a proposal or talking about fees, you can't just throw a number out there and hope for the best.
I imagine saying, my services are worth $1 billion because they'll change your life. Probably won't fly with most CFOs.
You're right about that. Our experts suggested focusing on the concrete results, those tangible outcomes, and using real examples to back it all up. So instead of saying, I'll boost your profits, you could say, I helped a company in your industry achieve a 20% jump in revenue using these same EXO principles.
So speak their language, the language of numbers, results, ROI.
You got it. Show them the math, back it up with case studies, and don't be afraid to get a little creative with your pricing. One size doesn't fit all here either.
It's about finding that middle ground where your value matches up with their budget.
Absolutely. And remember, it's always okay to negotiate to find a solution that works for everyone. But even with the best pricing and a fantastic proposal, there's always that chance of rejection.
Ugh, rejection. The word that makes even the most seasoned entrepreneur cringe a little. How do you handle those no's without letting them ruin your week?
It's tough, no doubt.
Yeah.
But our experts emphasized looking at those rejections as opportunities to learn and grow. Maybe it wasn't the right client, maybe the timing was off, or maybe you need to tweak your pitch.
So instead of a dead end, it's a detour, a chance to adjust your course and find a better path.
That's the spirit. And don't be afraid to ask for feedback either. You can learn so much from those rejections if you're willing to listen with an open mind.
Because those no's, they can sometimes highlight blind spots in your approach, right? It's like getting free coaching, just maybe not as fun.
Exactly. Use those opportunities, adapt your approach, and never stop getting better at what you do.
You know, it's funny how those rejections, as tough as they can be at the time, sometimes lead to even better opportunities down the road.
It's true. It's like they nudge you in the right direction, even if it takes a minute to realize it.
I like that. Speaking of nudges, let's talk about those times when you're feeling stuck or burnt out. Because even the most passionate ExO consultant needs a break sometimes, right?
Absolutely. You can't run on empty, world. Our experts were big on self-care, even with how demanding this work can be.
Okay, so what's self-care look like in the ExO world? We talk in meditation retreats and vision boards with algorithms on them.
Well, I'm sure those exist, but they were talking about those everyday things you could do to recharge and stay grounded.
Give me some examples, because let's be real, staring at spreadsheets and proposals all day can really drain your creativity.
Exactly. Disconnecting regularly, they said.
What?
Spending time in nature, picking up a hobby, or just having a tech-free evening with people you care about.
So it's not selfish to unplug and recharge. It's actually crucial for doing your best work.
Precisely. You can't show up for your clients if you're running on fumes.
True. And that reminds me, our experts also emphasized building a strong support network.
It's so important because remember, you're not in this alone. Surrounding yourself with mentors, other consultants, even clients who get it, that makes all the difference.
It's like having your own personal cheer squad, right? To celebrate the wins, offer support during the tough times, and remind you why you started doing this in the first place.
Exactly. And speaking of journeys, our experts had some really interesting things to say about the future of ExO Consulting.
Okay, time to look into the crystal ball. What's coming down the road for this whole field?
Well, they believe it's still early days. There's so much potential for growth and new ideas.
So we're just scratching the surface of what's possible with ExO.
Absolutely. As more companies embrace this whole ExO thing, they're going to need skilled consultants to guide them. And that demand is only going to keep growing. But here's the thing, specialization is key.
So instead of trying to be an ExO expert in everything, it's smarter to find your niche, that sweet spot where what you're passionate about meets what the market needs.
Exactly. When you develop that deep expertise, you become the go-to person in your field, the one clients seek out when they need that specialized guidance.
So you become that trusted advisor who not only understands the ExO framework, but also the ins and outs of a particular industry or approach.
Right. And don't be afraid to get creative with how you work with clients. The traditional consulting model isn't the only way.
Love that. So we're talking online courses, group coaching, maybe even subscription-based services, anything that breaks the mold and lets you make a bigger impact without compromising your vision.
Exactly. The future of ExO Consulting is all about innovation, adapting, and being willing to shake things up a bit. And it's funny, that brings us right back to the core of what it means to be an ExO consultant. It's not just a job, it's a mindset. It's about taking those principles of agility, leverage, and experimentation and applying them not just to work, but to life.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought to chew on. How can you apply those ExO principles, the constant learning, the bold experiments, the focus on purpose to your own life, your work, your community? Because we all have the potential to be exponential, to make a real difference in the world, and that's what this has all been about, inspiring you to step into your power, to embrace that potential. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Keep exploring, keep innovating, and keep embracing that exponential mindset.